Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. Caesar shit, force of air. Fuck them back, it's only for they war. They shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Laugh to your face, fight and die. Cause God forgives. Selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line. Lower classes, social slime, they don't matter. Genocide, sick from water, sick from air. Making money, they don't care. See the shit, force a bear. Fuck them back, it's only fair. They bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape. They burn the kids, no one makes countries. Lie to your face, fight and die, cause God forgives. Yeah. Coming back around again.
Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Ron Stevens. This is Canada Live here on UCY.tv, and I'm your host for the next hour. Where am I going to start this one? Let's see. Yesterday, we went over to court in Walkerton, Ontario, to drop in on Michael Schmidt's trial. He's the raw milk farmer who has been fighting the Ontario government for the last 22 years. And they're still trying to bring him down. And haven't been able to do so far. Michael is a man of very high moral values, knows he's right. And he's like me, when he knows he's right, well, hell or high water is going to back you down. That's the attitude that has to be taken. Not about guns and violence. It's about getting on your moral high horse and backing these clowns down, because they live in the amoral world. They live in the legal world. They live in the corporate world. All governments are corporations, and all corporations are interested in money, control, power, so on and so forth. So it was kind of interesting. We got there, I don't know what time we got there, probably about 11 o'clock yesterday morning, and talking to Michael's wife outside the courtroom. She was waiting to go in and testify. And this was a claim by the Minister of Natural Resources that Michael had stolen their cameras that they had put up around his farm to spy on his farm and the comings and goings of the people. And Michael never touched the cameras. Michael didn't take the cameras down. Michael didn't steal the cameras. So they'd had an all-day trial the day before, and it was supposed to be an all-day trial again tomorrow. And they brought in a high-powered female prosecutor from way outside the area, probably came from Toronto or somewhere, to come in and try and swing a conviction of theft on Michael. What I found rather curious was that after Michael's wife had given her testimony, and after she'd been cross-examined by the Crown, the idea was that this trial was supposed to come to a conclusion yesterday. There was supposed to be a finding of guilt or not guilty yesterday. That didn't happen. I noticed a judge sitting up on his bench there, kind of slunched over a bit, kind of looking rather perplexed. At one point, he started chewing on his fingernails because he knows he's supposed to take Michael down. Michael has 7 court cases going on all at once here as they try to pound him into the ground. And the judge knows he's supposed to find Michael guilty. He knows that. But the problem is there isn't any evidence that Michael had anything to do with the cameras. No evidence whatsoever. So instead of finishing up the trial yesterday, Michael was ready for his final summation, and so was the Crown. The judge, on the other hand, wasn't. Looking perplexed. What am I going to do? What am I going to do? You know, how do I find this guy guilty? Because he's guilty of nothing. So the judge decided he's going to have to do some pondering. So ended up we're going back, Michael's going back on the 8th of July to find the findings of the judge. So that'll be kind of interesting. And we'll go to that on the 8th as well to see what the deal was. And I'm hoping I can get Michael. I haven't bothered him, but I have people ask me to get him on the show, but I haven't bothered him. He's been up to his eyeballs. It's, you know, they're farmers. They got a lot of work to do every day. And these court cases, an awful pile of work to do on them. So once he gets his trial under this particular trial under his belt, I'm going to see if I can't get him on here, because there's suits and countersuits and all kinds of stuff going on. And I mean, this government, this so-called government, this corporation called Ontario, this amoral bunch of criminals, are now trying to steal his farm out from under him in order to try to put him out of business. And yeah, I'm just going to see if I can't get him on after July the 8th, and we'll see what the outcome of the judging was, and find out how the judge rules, and maybe we can get him on after that. Very, very interesting guy. Not only is Michael a farmer, for those who don't know, he's also a orchestra conductor. And for years and years and years, they would hold a Christmas up in the loft of the barn with an orchestra, with Michael conducting. So he's not just a farmer. Excuse me, please. Oh my goodness. Sorry about that. Yeah, so anyways, that's what's going on with Michael. Now I had a listener send me this. I think it was yesterday, and we're apparently, you know, all of these countries, all of these provinces, all the states have been implementing one UN agenda or another for a very, very long time. The whole idea that the UN was about peacekeeping has always been a crock of nonsense, and continues to be a crock of nonsense. It was just a foot in the door for some very corrupt, evil people to try to gain control of everything. So anyways, you know, up here we have the police raising pride flags at their police stations. We have the premiers and the prime minister. Our prime minister is going to be the very first prime minister to attend the gay pride parade. And you know, we got this real gender thing going on here right now. So what they're going to do in Ontario, and whatever they do anywhere, they're going to do everywhere. So we are so into gender here in Ontario. Our premier is a dyke, and our minister of environment and climate change is gay. So it's important. And our prime minister is a feminist. So, we got a real mess on our hands up here. So what are they going to do now? They've sold off our licensing. They've sold off so much of our stuff here. They call it Service Ontario now, but Service Ontario is just a contractor. Okay, it's not a government agency; it's a contractor, and they're doing that all over the place too. This is what they did in Russia when the wall came down, and they basically robbed the people, and that's what's going on here. They're robbing everybody. All the assets that were paid for by the labor, the sweat of the people is being sold off to their buddies and corporations, and where they end up working. It's like down in the States, when they're bouncing in and out. The guy's in the government, then he's working for Monsanto, then he's back in the government, then he's on an advisory board, so on and so forth. This is what goes on. Because it's a corporation. I don't know when people are going to get it through the thick skulls. This is not what you would call a government. It's a business. And never forget, all roads lead to Rome. And if you look at what Rome was like when Martin Luther, back in the 1500s, I believe it was, this devout monk, when he got to Rome, he couldn't believe what he was seeing. It was like Sodom and Gomorrah. And, little naked boys jumping on the birthday cakes and whatnot. And the tax was a sin tax, just like it was a sin number. And it's all about money. It's all about control, and it's all about perversion. Really, is what it's about. And so this is where we're right back there again. Now, back in the 1500s, Martin Luther went and nailed his problems up on the door. And the Gutenberg just created the printing press, so his 90 or whatever complaints he had about the church got printed and buzzed around the country, and therefore started the Reformation. And but anyways, Rome may have laid down for a little while, but they're not, and all of your so-called churches in the West are all pushing the UN agendas, which is basically the Roman nonsense. Anyways, here in Ontario now we have a problem with our health cards and the so-called driver's license. In that, we live in a very diversified world now. Where we have to suck up to everybody, except if you're white, and then, well, we're going to stomp you into the ground. And so anyways, this is what it's about. Gender on health card. This is right off the Ontario newsroom website, the Ontario government website. And this was sent to me yesterday or the day before, can't remember. By a listener, and I want to thank her, because I would have never found this thing. I haven't been back in this particular website for a while. Anyway, gender on health cards and driver's licenses. This is June 29th, which was yesterday. Ontario is changing. Okay, this is the news out of the Ministry of Government and Consumer Services. Ontario is changing the way it displays sex and gender information on health cards and driver's licenses. Health cards, from June 13 onward, the sex designation is no longer displayed on the Ontario health card upon their next renewal. Cardholders will receive a card that does not indicate sex. An Ontario health card that does not show sex designation is valid. The face of these cards has changed, but the way they work is the same. As always, healthcare providers are reminded to validate patients' health card number at the time of service. To get a health card without sex indicator before you Your regular renewal date call, here's a number. I'm going to call these guys. This is what, Thursday, so I can call them tomorrow. What? Tomorrow's a holiday. Okay, I can't call them tomorrow. To find a location near you, yada, yada, yada. Driver's licenses. In early 2017, driver's license holders will be given the option to display an X on their card as their gender identifier if they do not exclusively identify as a male or a female. An Ontario driver's license with a M or F or X in the sex field will be valid and may be used as an identification. There will be no other changes to the information on the driver's license card, and standard procedures for verifying validity of Ontario driver's license will continue to apply. The Ministry of Transportation is considering ways to reduce the risks and impacts that the holder of a gender-neutral license may face. This includes working with law enforcement agencies and license issuing authorities across North America to raise awareness about the changes to the Ontario driver's license. In addition, the Ministry of Transportation needs to make updates to its computer system to allow it to begin issuing licenses with an M, F, or X. Some other countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and Nepal, use an X instead of an M or F on government records when gender is not specified. It is also standard accepted by the International Civil Aviation Organization, which promotes consistency among travel documents. When they're available, there will not be a fee to get a driver's license with an X. To sign up to receive an email alert when you can apply for a driver's license with an X gender identifier, go to ontario.ca MyID. Other government forms and products. This summer, Ontario will launch public and stakeholder consultation on how ministries collect, use, and display sex and gender information on public-facing forms and products. The government will use this feedback to help develop a policy that applies to all ministries. The new policy will be announced in the fall and may be revised periodically in the future to reflect the evolving understanding of gender. Now, that would all be well and good. I'm going to just throw this in the chat before I go any further because, if you are in Canada, or it doesn't matter where you are, even if you're in the States, you will find information that will be useful because the same stuff's going on everywhere. It doesn't matter where you live. The same nonsense is going on. Now, where the heck did that get to? Oh, here we are. Now, it's funny what you get a lot of hits on. I'm running Facebook as well. I don't like the thing. I hate it, as a matter of fact, but it's a good way to move some stuff around. And this particular story is getting an awful lot. Didn't go in. It's getting an awful lot of hits on it. And it's really not that god-awful important, but when I put really important stuff, this is what I hate about Facebook. When I put something really important in, but it requires a fair bit of reading, you get very few hits. And when you put something in really short and it's pretty simple, you tend to get a lot of hits. And when people have to actually sit down and think about stuff, it seems beyond their capacity, which really scares me. Why is this thing? It's not allowing me to. What the hell's going on here? It's not allowing me to pick off the. Let me try that one more time. it's not allowing me for some oddball reason to pick off. Oh, I see why. Okay. I see what the problem is. Let's do it this way then. All right, here we go. But anything to get people to react, I guess, or think a little bit is better than nothing in this day and age. There's a whole bunch of problems with this story. So there is, and most people will get it. First of all, Ontario is a corporation. The driver's license is owned by the Crown. It is not owned by the holder of it. And that's one problem. And somebody put something in the Facebook, which was really good of them to do, because it kind of got some of the people thinking anyways, and that is that the driver's license can't have a gender anyways, because the driver's license is to a person. Okay? You're acting as the agent for the person. Now, the driver's license owned by the Crown, which is a fictional thing. The one it's issued to is a fictional entity. And fictional entities don't have genders. A fictional entity is something on a piece of paper. Paper is not gender specific. But regardless of that, this idea that there is an X out there. What are you, male or female? Well, I'm an X. Really? Now, that's interesting because the police are up to their eyeballs promoting this multiple gender stuff. There are only two genders. There's male and there's female. There's no X's. Now, there's people who, what is that, self-identify? That's another piece of nonsense right out of the Tower of Babel, which we'll call the UN, although the European Union is built to look like the Tower of Babel, or Babel. So made a suggestion there, because the police and everybody else has to walk very tenderly when it comes around a gender issue, you could very quickly be hauled up in front of a rights commission. And the lawyers love this because it makes work for them. They're the ones that write the legalese into all this nonsense. And they use legal jargon, and legal jargon by definition is something that is used to gain the upper hand or deceive and deceive. So it's based on trickery. Anything they can do to increase their numbers, okay? Because that's what we're run by, lawyers. You can't pick up a box of cereal without a lawyer being involved in it. You go to your town hall, you ask a question, well, we'll have to talk to the lawyers about it. Well, I thought you're running the show. No, we don't know anything really. We have to go and see the lawyers. Everybody has to go see the lawyer. See the lawyer. Ask a lawyer. You can't give legal advice. You're not a lawyer. Which means you're probably trying to tell somebody the truth, because lawyers, by nature, are liars because they're in the business of deception. Anyway, somebody came up with an idea on Facebook after I posted this, and it says, well, under the circumstances, what we all ought to do is screw the MF and everybody get an X card. Because the government said in its own news outlet here, news story, is that it's an evolving situation. They are probably going to add more gender-specific stuff in the future, so you don't want to get caught there either. But the idea was that if you want to be treated better by a cop when you get pulled over, get an X on it. Because when you show the cop the X, he don't know what he's dealing with. And he's going to be very careful what he deals with, because the way it's set up, if he says anything to you and you're an X that upsets you in any way, you'll be able to haul this poor sorry ass to the so-called Human Rights Tribunal. Probably end up taking his house on him. So, that comment on what I posted in Facebook is a pretty good one. Be an X. Don't be a man. Don't be a woman. Because everything's against you, people. This is the decade of the X, if you will. You want special privileges? Be an X. And being an X, you can self-identify as anything, because X is like the Joker card. You can make it any damn thing you want. To what reason? To your advantage. So maybe we all ought to be marking X's on these driver's licenses. Or we should just refuse to have a driver's license because you don't need one. Now, they always say the same thing. An Ontario health card or an Ontario driver's license, well, that's a corporate, it's what it's saying. It's a corporate driver's license. And the corporation has come up with this new scheme. They call you their people. That is ownership owned by the corporation. And, okay, of course, here are some other countries, including Australia, New Zealand, and Nepal. This is how they always get this rolling. They did it with the renewable energy. They do it with the electric cars. They do it with the don't use fossil fuels. They use this all the time. And all you got to do is go read a few UN documents and you get it. Go read a few Rockefeller Foundation documents, then you get it. It's a great sales pitch. I mean, if you're in marketing, you understand exactly what I'm talking about. Is the just like syndrome or the just like sales pitch. Well, why the hell would we be doing this? Why would we be putting an X on the driver's licenses? Well, other countries are doing it. Why, look at Australia, New Zealand. They're doing it. That softens the target down, softens the target up so that the target is susceptible. And they do this through what is called, the just like is the suggestion syndrome. If you look up suggestion in etymology, it is called evil and wicked. Why? Because you're being taken advantage of and you're being deceived. That's why they always sell this crap like this. We don't want to be left behind. We got to get up more windmills. We could be the greenest. We could be the leader. And then you go to any other country, and that's the exact same line that's being sold to them. Why, look at Germany. Look at Denmark. We'll be left behind. Now, the next pitch after this, I see that Norway is saying that by 2025, I think it is, that they will not be, you will not be allowed to sell a gas or diesel vehicle into Norway, even though Norway, 48% of its income, I think it is, comes from oil. They will not be allowing anyone to purchase a vehicle or any company to sell a vehicle into Norway if it's diesel or gas. It's going to have to be electric, I guess. What else is there? I suppose you always stick a windmill, a solar panel on the roof, but you ain't going to get too far. So that's the next thing coming, but this is all about getting you out of your personal vehicle. This is all about getting you on the light rail transits that you're purchasing. This is all about getting you living closer to light rail transits so that you don't require a vehicle. And again, I will say, go look at North Korea. Penang Mang, or whatever the name of the main city is. Go look at that. Go look at some video there. This is the plan. That to me is the template of what they want. No night lights. Keep it dark at night. No personal transportation except bicycles, possibly e-bikes, subways, buses, and so forth, and walking. But as far as the general public is concerned, you ain't going to be driving nothing. The only things that are going to be on the road are going to be government vehicles and repair vehicles. The rest of the time, you're going to be on the transit system, and you're going to be ski-rude. So we had better start standing up to this nonsense. Who the hell has the power to tell me what the hell we're going to drive? Nobody. Nobody. They do not have the power to restrict you to what they decide you're going to motorize yourself in or move yourself from A to B, and they do not have that power. They have the police force, but I'm starting to think there ain't very many street policemen anymore. Cop pulls me over, I'm going to have to ask him straight out. You're going to have to identify your sexual orientation. I need to know who the hell I'm dealing with, because I don't want to say something to you that might upset you, that would make you so angry as to shoot me and or drag me before a human rights tribunal. I mean, if the police are hoisting pride flags, then I got to question how many straight people are left in the police department. Seriously. But anyways, I really encourage people to go look at some of the video out of North Korea. It bothered me for years. If North Korea is so corrupt and so whatever, how come nobody's ever taken North Korea down? Why has their leader just been able to stay there? Why have they telling me they got lousy human rights and so on and so forth, and very little electricity and very few personal vehicles? Jesus, sounds like, the people are being caged in there. So how come the United Nations and all the other nations who are into freedom and human rights, if they're so worried about that stuff, why didn't they go into Korea instead of Afghanistan or Iraq or Iran or any of these other countries? Why didn't they go into North Korea? Because it looks very much like North Korea is a template of our future. Now, I see another article that was talking about that the artificial night lights, are disturbing spring. Well, let's see. Spring must be on time every year in North Korea because they don't have a lot of artificial night light over there. So now our lights, our street lights, our house lights, our car lights, are all causing Mother Nature a problem in that spring now comes too early. And we can't mess with Mother Nature because new science suggests evil, wicked nonsense, nefarious garbage, suggests that the light pollution that we give off interferes with spring. So we know from reading UN documents and that, and IE documents and whatnot, that they wish to restrict our electricity usage by 75% and our water usage by 75%. Unless you're a corporation like Nestle, and then you can suck it out of every available place 24/7. But for you, not such a good deal. So we know they want 75% less water use. We know they want to drive down our usage of electricity by 75%. And eventually they're going to drive you out of your vehicles if they can. They're going to drive you out of your homes because they specifically said private ownership of property is, well, it's a form of social injustice, for crying out loud. So now we're well along the way here now, okay? This stuff's been coming at us forever. Radio hosts such as myself and many others have been explaining this stuff to people for near ever. So now we're really getting in our faces with this gender thing. And that's got to get fixed. But I think the best thing we can do is everybody mark a freaking X. Because if you're male or female, you're at the bottom of the rung. If you're an X, which can be pretty near anything that you can possibly think of, then you're going to get more respect. And you're likely not going to get a ticket as quick as you are as if you're a male or female. So after giving this consideration, I would suggest that everybody mark an X. Now, where am I going here? I want to run back to the courthouse for a minute from yesterday. Now, I printed up some stuff yesterday because I was going to the courthouse and I'd been dealing with this for a period of time. And so I wanted to stop into the clerk's office there and give this to them so they could read it. So I was talking to a girl there, working there, and I asked her if she could pass this around the office because I needed to read it. And she told me she'd go get her manager, which is the clerk, which is Anita, who I've spoken with to a lot in the past, particular leading up to and our 3-day trial over there. And so she came out with a big smile on her face and, oh, hey, Ron, how's it going? God, what's it been? It's got to be like almost 2 years since we've seen each other, right? Yeah, whatever. I said, anyways, Anita, you look fine and all. We just did our pleasantries and that. And I said, I need you to read this stuff and pass it around, okay? Because you know and I know this whole thing's a complete and total freaking fraud. And, I asked her right off the bat, I says, we need to agree on something before we even get started on this. And what we need to agree on is that a preamble, okay, sets the tone and the meaning of everything that comes after the preamble. But the preamble is the most important part of any document where there's a preamble. And she said, absolutely. Fine. Wonderful. So the preamble of the Canadian Charter of Rights and Freedoms states specifically, whereas Canada is founded upon the principles that recognize the supremacy of God and the rule of law. Now that goes back a long time ago to the Pope, who was declared himself the Vicar of Christ. In other words, a proxy, and that's why Rome said they own everything because they're the proxy of God or the Vicar of Christ. But the idea was that they had to be beholden to the law, which they didn't do. They went to the legal side. So they broke the law, so they really don't have any power. They have a lot of propaganda. They have armies and so on and so forth, and the force of law. So anyway, she agreed to that, and I said, it's really funny because when I phone up the Chief Justice's office for the feds, they don't want to hear it. And I've read lots of stuff where they denounce it, saying, well, that shouldn't even be in there. Well, it is in there. I don't care if it shouldn't have been in there. It's there. It is absolutely there. It's the preamble. So we have that. Then we have the rule of law, I'm telling her, which says it's an ambiguous statement. I've done this here before, so I won't go through it all. I will just go to the end of it. In a third context, the term means rule according to a higher law. No written law may be enforced by the government unless it conforms with certain unwritten universal principles of fairness, morality, and justice that transcend human legal systems. And I explained to her the legal system, by definition, is an amoral system, okay? And the rule, the supremacy of God and the principles are based on moral principles, so that again, puts legal in a very precarious position because law and legal aren't the same thing. And then I found this thing about Aboriginal stuff. It was a paper out of Brandon, Manitoba, I think. It says Aboriginal government could arguably exercise Crown power in fulfillment of the inherent Aboriginal right to exercise the power necessary to produce and reproduce Aboriginal society. It is of some interest in this respect to note the common origins assumed for both Crown power as the continuation of the divine right of kings and for the inherent Aboriginal right to self-government is as an inalienable right given them by the Creator. So all the way through this, we're talking about God, we're talking about God's law, we're talking about the Creator, we're talking about inalienable rights given by the Creator. None of this has anything to do with the legal system. All of this overpowers the legal system. The legal system is completely false. It's a fraud. It's something made up in the mind. So we went through a bunch of this stuff, and I'm not getting a whole lot of, I'm not getting any discourse from her at all. Nice enough lady, but like I told her, we all came through the same damned educational system, which didn't teach us anything of any use to us. Okay, we were deceived by the education system. The education system did not make us knowledgeable people. It made us stupid people. It made us sheep. It made us followers. It made us subservient. It did everything, I guess, that it was supposed to do as an education system, but there was nothing to do with knowledge in that system. So I explained to her about the responsible government, that we were given a responsible government. The people did not create the government, okay? The lawyers and the, whatever you would call the governors and the royalty in that, they gave us good government because it was to their benefit. Because if the people had created the government, it would be a whole different ball game. But they didn't create the government. It was given to us by a bunch of deceiving, lying, thieving lawyers and their counterparts, bankers. So what it says is responsible. A responsible government, they told us that they were our servants. Well, how do we become their slaves if they're supposed to be our servants? Well, they flipped the game around again. Responsible means legally liable or accountable. Responsible means dependable, accountable, assailable, at fault, blamable, blameworthy, chargeable, culpable, guilty, indebted, negligent, obligated, obliged, reckless, yada, yada, yada. Associated concepts, duty, responsible, cause, responsible party. Now, that's who's supposed to be the responsible, is the government. They're the responsible party. They're supposed to be the servants of the people. And if they screw up, they are held accountable. They are assailable. They can be held at fault. They can be blamed. They can be chargeable. But they turned that around and made us the responsible party. We're the ones they blame. We're the ones that are held accountable. They've made us obligated. Responsible under liable, it says accountable, dependable, dutiful, legally accountable, legally obligated, legitimate, liable, obligated, trustworthy, sound, true. Sounds like all words governments use. But they are not obligated. They're not held liable. They're not trustworthy. They're never held accountable. They're definitely not dependable. They're never true. And they're not trustworthy. So obviously they're not responsible. So we don't have a responsible government. And like I told her, I said, I told Anita, I said, it took me a long time to figure out where the hell this word legal come from. I punched in all kinds of words trying to pop legal. And when I punched in the word loyal, up came the word legal. Now, irresponsible is not, is someone who is not legally liable. Well, now, who's that? That's the government. Who's not legally obligated? That's who? The government. It's supposed to be us. Section 32 of the Charter states that it only applies to government. Yet they're holding us in a position of liability all the time. They can steal from us then, which they do. Irresponsible is not legally answerable for conduct or actions. Now, how many police have you seen beat the hell out of somebody, end up in court, is thrown out of court over and over and over again because they say the police were acting within their capacity or whatever, within their rights. So they can beat the snot out of you, but they're not held legally liable. If you look at a cop crooked, you could be charged with assault. Well, who's being held responsible here? We are. Who's irresponsible? They are. So they turned it upside down again. But where it got really interesting was we were talking about the fact that the country, Canada, is a corporation, which she agreed with. She agreed, this is the clerk, this is the head honcho at the courthouse. She agreed that the Queen is the head of state. She agreed that therefore that makes the Prime Minister of the country, basically, for all intents and purposes, but we call him the Prime Minister. That's that church crap out of Rome. He is for all intents and purposes, the CEO of the company, the corporation called Canada, which is a crown corporation owned by the Queen Crown Vatican. It's a business. It's a freaking business. And she agreed with all that. She also agreed that the Queen is still running the country because we have a Governor General, we have a Lieutenant Governor. Geez, that all sounds military, doesn't it? We have the ministries, which is the church. We have the Governor General, Lieutenant Governor, which is military. Doesn't sound like a government buying for the people, because it's not. Been hoodwinked, been lied to since the day we were born. So she didn't disagree with anything. And this is what I'm finding now. Years ago, when I would bring this up with people, oh, that's your opinion, right? You need to get the advice of a lawyer. I can't answer that, this, that. And I've been talking to these people for so freaking long now. They finally said, you're right. You're right. It is a corporation. The Queen's the head of state, and yada, 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 yada. And it's a company. Now, one thing I noticed interesting at the courthouse, when I was outside having a smoke, I was standing up at the building, and down there's a small, like the lawn drops down, and then there's a cement pad down there with two flagpoles on. One's a British flag and one's a Canadian flag. And from where I was standing, it kind of looked to me like the flagpole with the British flag was taller than the pole with the Canadian flag on it. And thought, well, maybe that's just because of the roll of the hill and everything where I'm standing. So I went down onto the road where it's flat with where the flagpoles are, and no, I was right. The flagpole with the British flag on it is riding higher than the Canadian flag. And when I was talking to the clerk after that, I said, look, we're still under the thumb of Britain. I mean, we are a realm. The Queen's the head of state, and the British flag is flying higher than the Canadian flag. You know, they say we're independent. Well, if we're independent, why is the coat of arms on the courthouse wall, in the courtroom rather, and why is her picture in the courtroom? If she's just a figurehead. There's no figurehead there. But what I found really interesting, I got talking about the elections. You know, I was talking about the paper. You know, I was holding the paper. I said, you look at this paper, okay? That's a person. That's a person. You know, people come to this court, they think they were charged with something. They weren't charged with squat because the legal system can't charge the man or woman, of which she agreed. This is in the courthouse, for crying out loud. And she agreed that the person is an inanimate object, a piece of paper. That's what was charged. And they tie you to that as an agent without your knowledge. You think you were charged, but all you are there for, the only purpose of you in the courtroom is to animate the person, the legal fiction. That's your only job in the courtroom, is to animate something that's dead. And that you, as the agent showing up for that, you take responsibility for it. Which makes you what? Liable. Look up the word responsible. But I said, okay, so now what we have a problem, we agree on the fact that this person is this inanimate, made up in the mind legal entity. And we also agree now that there's no such thing as a vote. You don't vote, you can't vote. An inanimate object can't vote, but that's who registers to vote. That's who, because you can't register to vote. Persons register to vote, and persons vote. But you're not a person. You're the agent of the person. Some people go to register. They think they're registering when they're not. They're registering on behalf of, as an agent of, or for. And when they go mark the ballot, I've said this a gazillion times on this show, when they go mark the ballot, they think they're marking the ballot, but they're just marking a proxy vote. And this is what really knocked my socks off. When I'm going through this with Anita and the fact that I talked to the people in charge of the elections and they, after 6 months, are still saying, okay, Ron, we can't verify whether or not the elections are legal. Well, then you just verified they're not. And the real kicker on this, when we're talking about it, and I was talking about marking the ballot, I didn't say it was a proxy vote. I mean, I've said it a gazillion times, but I didn't in the courthouse yesterday. It was the court clerk looked at me and said, it's a proxy vote. Exactly. It's a proxy vote. And the only place that a proxy vote takes place is a corporation, a shareholder. You can do a vote for a shareholder as a proxy. Now, because it's a shareholder and you're the agent of the shareholder, where's your cut? Where's your cut? Okay, what they've made is you responsible, made you liable for everything, where the government is not responsible. They can spend all the money they want. Each government that comes in can blow more money out the window than they want because they're using you as collateral. They're not held responsible for the debts. You are. And that'll make people really ticked off. The whole thing is a big freaking scam. So I was very happy when I dropped in at the clerk's office yesterday, because I haven't been in there for a while. And, you know, I've known Anita for some period of time now, and we've had lots of talks. And this time when I went in and I gave her what I had written out here, there was absolutely no denial, no argument whatsoever from her. And to me, that's really positive. It's really positive. And so, you know, we just got to keep banging away at this stuff. This is our world, not their world. We got to get back to law. And we're going to be out of time here real quick. What I want to say right now is Sunday, this is the most important thing I'm going to do for a while. Sunday, Murray Riley, retired defense lawyer, is going to be my guest on Sunday here on UCY at noon. And we're going to have 2 hours, basically, where I'm going to explain to him why legal is a crock of nonsense and extremely evil, and he's going to explain to us why I'm wrong. And and I've always been one to say, you know, if you prove me wrong, I'll be the first to thank you. But he ain't going to prove me wrong. That's a given. But then again, Murray has come up through a school system, which he obviously didn't question. But we're going to get a question on Sunday. So I hear the music, so I want to thank everybody. Remember, if you're going to get an Ontario driver's license or they have whatever
selling lies and buying time, killing people next in line, lower classes, social slime, they don't matter, genocide, sick from water, sick from air, making money, they don't care, Caesar shit, force them air, fuck them back, it's only for they bomb, they shoot, they kill, they massacre, rape, they burn the kids, no one makes countries laugh to your face, fight and die, 'cause God will give.
My name is S.M. Gibson, and I am the host